Hello everyone, Ivan from Lake Country Manufacturing. I hope everyone is doing well. As always, I like to start my lives just a little bit early to make sure we have no technical difficulties and everything is on point when the actual time does come up. So the time is coming up shortly. Matthew Gibb, all the way from Australia, is watching. Thank you. Anthony, I don't know where you're from, but thanks for watching. If you could give me a little sign, a thumbs up or something, just to make sure that the sound is correct and you're hearing me properly, and then we'll get started. Hello, Al. So just so people know, I'm in the bus right now. Today we're in Ottawa, Kansas, and oh, Ireland. Yes, 12 a.m. exactly. Thanks for staying up. Just so you know, Anthony, you don't have to stay up till the middle of the night to watch these. They are available on the page at a later date. So not a big problem. My wife Sylvie is watching from the back of the bus. That's great. She could be here live with us if she wanted to, but nonetheless. Just one second. On m'entend bien, Sylvie?
Yes.
Okay, so you can hear me? Great. And okay, wow, we got people from all over the world watching. This is great. So today's subject is proper pad maintenance. There's a lot of different methods of maintaining a pad. There's some that are great. Okay, Matthew. Some that are great methods of maintaining a pad. Others that sound great, look great, but in essence actually destroy your pads or damage your pads. So we'll start with the good, and then we'll get with the bad later. Oh, from the Philippines. Excellent. So the best way of maintaining a pad is the System 3000 from Lake Country Manufacturing. And I'm not just saying that because I work for Lake Country. I've been a proponent of the System 3000 ever since it came out. There's a number of reasons why the System 3000 is the ultimate way of maintaining your pads. First of all, it's designed by a pad manufacturer. Goes without saying, they want their pads to last as long as possible as well. Secondly is the way it cleans the pad is it injects a cleaning liquid, and the product that comes with it, called Snappy Clean, is what you should be using in your pad washer. Works great, doesn't interfere with any polishing compounds that I've found, and does a spectacular job of cleaning out the pads. That being said, the System 3000 has a couple different ways of being used. One is recirculating the cleaning fluid. Now, if you're in a really severe water restriction, that may be an okay thing to do, but recirculating the cleaning solution means you're not cleaning your pads with new liquid every time. The other way of using it is with a filter. Now, there's a filter that comes with it, goes in the bottom, and you can use it with the filter. The filter is going to filter out a lot of the contamination, but it doesn't filter out everything. The way I prefer is with the capture method. So you have two layers in the pad washer. You have your water in the bottom, or your cleaning solution in the bottom. It gets pumped up to the top. It goes out of the spray nozzle into your pad, cleans your pad, and goes back into a capture basin. So that capture basin is there to keep the two separate, so your used cleaning solution and your fresh cleaning solution. That way you're not contaminating your pads. They are staying clean at all times. The other advantage of the System 3000D pad washer is that it makes your pad slightly humid. Now, humectifying your pad or making it slightly damp has other advantages other than being clean. One of the great advantages of having a damp pad is you don't have any instances of dry buffing. So dry buffing is when you don't prime your pad completely and you don't have areas, or you have areas on your pad that have no liquid or lubrication to them. That can cause micro marring, specifically when you're using a dual action machine, and also when you're using a rotary, it can cause swirls. Using the pad washer is a great way of keeping the pad just slightly damp. And when you use it properly, which means you pump the pad washer with your tool and the pad on it, run the pad over top of the pad washer, and then lift it up about a 1/4 inch, just so it's not touching, and bring your machine up to full speed. That is going to bring out as much of the moisture possible. It brings out a lot of the moisture from the pad, and at the same time just leaves it perfect. The added weight, for those of you that are concerned about weight of a pad, it's less than 1 gram that it leaves in the pad. So it gives you a much better surface, and your pads, you'll actually see that they're softer as well. So if you take a brand new pad, 2 brand new pads, put one through the pad washer, wring it out, and touch it, you'll see that it's actually a little softer because the foam now has lubricity to it. So those are the advantages of the System 3000D. There are other ways of cleaning pads that work quite well. One of the ways of cleaning a pad that works quite well, if you don't have the pad washer, is simply a microfiber towel. So if you have a dampened microfiber towel, you can run your machine up against that microfiber towel and then continue on polishing. If you're using a traditional wool pad, so a twisted wool pad on your rotary, the spur, not the one off your cowboy boot, but an actual pad spur, is a great tool for maintaining the pad. The only disadvantage of the pad spur is that you have an issue with, yes, Chris, I'm reading the comments as we go. So, by the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. That's what I'm here for. Where was I? Oh yes, so the pad spur. The disadvantage of the pad spur is it tears up your pad a little bit, first of all, but secondly is the dust that it puts into the air. Now everybody these days has masks, so wear your N95 mask when you're polishing, not just for being in social environments, but with the mask, or with the dust that it creates, it also gets on the car, it gets in your shop, it gets everywhere. So if we can contain the dust like the System 3000D does, even better. The other type of pad that we have, of course, the microfiber pad. Now the microfiber pad is the exception to the rule. The microfiber pad doesn't work too well with a spur, works really well with the System 3000D, so no problem there. But it's one of the only pads you can actually clean using compressed air. Now a lot of people, I've seen them use their compressed air to clean foam pads. That's a great way of destroying foam pads. Now if I were on commission sales from Lake Country, I would tell you, definitely, go ahead, clean your pads with compressed air because you're going to buy more pads. But I'm not commissioned, so I'm not going to tell you that. No, at Lake Country we want your pads to last as long as possible, and it's very negative way of cleaning pads. Basically, if you look at foam up close, the cell structure is bubbles connected by webbing. That webbing basically is what's holding everything together. When you take compressed air to it, or even worse, a pressure washer, you're breaking some of that webbing apart, destroying the structure of the pad. The pad may look the same, may even feel the same, but it's not going to last as long. Chris, the best way to wash any pad is the pad washer, but compressed air can work with a microfiber pad. The disadvantage, though, is, again, dust in the air. And in terms of safety, in terms of everything else, having that dust in the air isn't good for you, isn't good for the tool, isn't good for the machine. The Udos will be coming out shortly. We've had a bit of delay because of the coronavirus, but it's on its way. Oh, I missed one comment there. Just 1 second here. Yes, so Jen, for priming a pad, just getting it humid is all you need. Oh, I lost all my comments. There we go. Okay, they're back. Just by dampening the pad, you don't need to use an excessive amount of compound on the pad. And oh, thank you for putting that link in there. Perfect. You don't have an excessive amount of compound on the pad, which again can create dust, can create all sorts of negative issues. And loading the pad is another thing I wanted to talk about. So loading the pad is a very negative thing. By loading the pad, I mean if you prime it with compound and then you keep adding compound without cleaning the pad and you're going around the vehicle, there are places that I've been, shops I've been to, where they have a pad that normally weighs about 28 grams, so close to an ounce. It weighs almost a pound or almost 400 grams when I pick it up. They have loaded that so much because all they do is they keep putting compound on. The other aspect of that is when we're polishing paint. We've all hopefully polished single stage paint. When you polish single stage paint, you see the color change immediately on the face of your pad. When we're polishing clear coat paint, we don't see that color change. That color change, because the clear coat is clear, obviously, that's why they call it clear coat, there's no color change, but we're getting just as much of the clear coat on that pad as we do the pigment from the single stage. It's just that we don't see it. So we need to be conscious of that. And if you just keep adding compound and keep polishing and keep adding compound and keep polishing, going around the vehicle, you're going to load the pad. That creates, first of all, a heavy pad which unbalances the machine if you have a DA. Secondly, it creates excessive heat. And excessive heat does a lot of negative things for you. Excessive heat makes your compound and your polishes stick to the surface. It diminishes their cutting ability and destroys your pads. Mike, wet pads, there's a difference between a wet pad and a damp pad. So, Mike Richard, you're correct. A wet pad just makes a mess. If you're spinning your pad out at the full speed of your machine, and it has to be a free spinning DA. If you are using a forced rotation DA, this is not something that's going to work. So the pad washer will work for cleaning your pads, but it will not work for spinning out your pads. And then you have an excessively wet pad, and that excessively wet pad, as you say, just makes a mess and doesn't work well. The Tornador is just as bad as compressed air, because it is compressed air. So be careful with the Tornador when using it. You are diminishing the life of your pads. It is definitely not a great way of doing it. Looks good, feels good, but it doesn't do it. The pad washer, the way I prefer to use it is as I'm polishing. So I put one pad on my machine and I go. I never put clean polish on a dirty pad, meaning as soon as I'm done my section pass, I clean my pad, then I reapply new polish to the pad. Just 1 second here. Yes, masks are essential, Chris, for every compound. It doesn't matter what brand you're using. That dust is not good for you. But as I was saying, when I polish, I go around one pad the whole vehicle because I'm cleaning it after every section pass. I never reapply polish or compound to a pad without cleaning it. The other technique of doing it is to buy multiple pads. A lot of people like to go one pad per panel. Some do 2 or 3 pads per panel, and you can put a stack of pads on your cart or on your vehicle and go around, polish the whole vehicle, then clean your pads. So that is one of the ways of doing it, but multiple pads. One advantage of that is it's going to cool your pads. Your pads are not allergic to heat, but the less heat you can instill into your pads, the better they are, the longer they're going to last, the better they're going to perform as well. So with that, the pad washer, the System 3000D, every time you use it, you're cooling your pads. And speaking of cooling your pads, if you've ever had to work with a Nissan that has the self-healing paint, this is one little trick that I've used for years, works wonderfully well. Put ice cubes in your pad washer. The colder that vehicle surface can be when you're polishing it, the better your polishing results will be, the better it's going to react. So if you don't have the option of telling your customer to come back in January when it's -10 outside to do the car, then put ice in your pad washer with the water in your cleaning solution and clean your pad often. As soon as it gets warm, clean it again. So just a little aside there about the keeping it cool. But keeping your pad cool will lengthen the longevity of your pads, will make your pads last a lot longer, and will make your cutting more efficient. The cooler the surface, the more any compound will cut. When we had single stage, or when we were working on lacquer paints, heat was a good thing. Heat is not a good thing with modern paints. And that heat, not only does it degrade the pads, but it also degrades the paint, it degrades the polish, it creates a lot of negative issues. So the cooler you can keep your surface as you're polishing, the better it is. Again, by having a slightly damp pad and not a wet pad, a slightly damp pad, that's one way of doing it with the pad washer. The other way is changing out pads. Eric, the pad washer is the Lake Country System 3000D. It's ever since it came out, I've been using it, and it's been great. Jen, talk to your distributor. There's a lot of yes, Al, perfect, 3000D, that's it. But talk to your distributor. Anything you want, your distributor can get. They just may need to get a slightly larger quantity than you might want, but if they see there's a need or a demand for it, I'm sure they're happy to order it for you. So that is one of the advantages. It's keeping things cool of the pad washer. As I was saying before, the other strategy is multiple pads, and multiple pads has advantages as well. The advantage is you're not cleaning as you go, so you can be just a tiny bit quicker, but not that much, because you're having to take the pad off, put the pad on, line it up, things like that. The other disadvantage of changing pads is your Velcro on your backing plate will wear out faster on your tool. When you're taking your pad off, if you have a pad, some of our pads have a white Velcro, and you'll see it on the white Velcro. If you stop polishing and then immediately rip off the pad, you'll see sometimes little black marks. Those are hooks from the hook and loop of your Velcro that you've actually ripped off. There's one question that went by here from Tim. So for what pad works best, our force pads are designed specifically for the forced rotation machines. So they're the ones you'll want to try out. They're great on the forced rotation machine. HDO also works well on the forced rotation machine from my experience, so give those a try, Tim. Carlos, yes, you can just put water in the System 3000D, but a cleaning solution will help. One of the ways of doing it is just spritzing your pad with an all-purpose cleaner before putting it in the pad washer. The other way is using Snappy Clean, which to me is the best way, and it doesn't require a lot of Snappy Clean. The envelopes that we sell is just half an envelope, so you don't need that much of it. Another way, you can use a rinseless wash. That works as well. So there's a lot of different things you can try. You don't want to use a pure APC in there because it damages the seals. So just be careful of that. Oh, lost it. Sorry. Let's get everybody back up here where they should be. There we go. And we have Marcin from Poland, our distributor from Poland, with us. And I believe it's around 2 o'clock in the morning where he is. So thanks for joining us again. So keeping pads clean, keeping pads cool has many advantages, many needs as well. You're going to find that your polishing and compounding will be faster, will be more controlled. Your pads are going to last longer, and anything else. The other ways of cleaning pads, so like I mentioned, compressed air you want to stay away from as much as possible. The other one that some people use when they're using the multiple pad method is just throwing them in a bucket with a bit of APC or Snappy Clean, and you can use Snappy Clean in this case as well, and then throwing them in the washing machine. That works well. A few little things there too. With the washing machine, you want to put it on the delicate cycle with cold water. Again, heat is not a good thing with plastic. Or foam. The other thing is, do not put them, in the dryer. It goes without saying, you don't want your Velcro, your plastic, and all that. Dish detergent, I wouldn't go there. You don't want anything that creates suds, basically. So Sean, yeah, washing them by hand, dish detergent does great, but in the pad washer, the suds, you'll find it's not necessarily the best thing. Now what you can do is mix up a dilution of the dish detergent that you like to use and just spritz it on the pad before putting in the pad washer. That's one way of doing it. Basically, you have a pump with seals. You don't want to have anything that's going to gum up or damage those seals, and that could be a soap or a harsh APC has that capacity of damaging it like that. And by the way, do feel free to ask questions. It's a half-hour, not podcast, but it's a half-hour live, and we don't necessarily need to take, the presentation doesn't take up 1 ounce of, or what are you asking, Al? Sorry. You'll have to rephrase your question there, Al. I'm not sure what you're trying to ask. So, but yes, if you can use O&R or any rinseless wash, yes, you can. And I would use 1/2 ounce to a gallon, the standard dilution that everybody's used to using for cleaning. That works wonderfully well in the pad washer. Snap and Clean does a better job than O&R, but O&R provides a little more lubrication. So it's a trade-off either way. Other ways of washing pads, the pressure washer. And I've seen people that have Velcro on the wall, and they put their pads there and then take the pressure washer to them. Again, that's a great way of damaging pads. They're not going to last very long. Product announcements for 2020, Sean, a lot of them. Unfortunately, they're slightly delayed because of the coronavirus. The obvious one, of course, is the Udos 51E. Everyone at Lake Country can't wait for that. And there's associated pads with that. Yes, the System 3000D is great with a rotary. It works as well with a rotary, a DA, a forced rotation, a long stroke, short stroke. You name the tool, it fits it. We have the System 2000, which if you're using exclusively wool pads with a rotary, does a great job. It's actually designed for that and will actually do a better job than the System 3000D. But the System 3000D is an all-around winner. Just performs spectacularly well with every pad. There's no pad that I've tried that hasn't reacted well to being cleaned in the System 3000D. Whether it be a wool pad, a waffle pad, a flat pad, a microfiber pad, CCS pads, curved edge, you name it, they all fit in the System 3000D first, and they all get clean in the System 3000D. Other than that, any other questions, people? No? Come on. I'm sure there's more questions out there. The System 3000D, most Lake Country country manufacturing distributors do carry it. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it. Now we have the System 3000 that doesn't have the capture basin in it. That one works great, but again, you have the slight little thing that it's recycling the same cleaning solution all the time. So you need to change the solution more often. It's a slightly lower price point, but as far as I'm concerned personally, the System 3000D is the better value of the two. And there's a, with the System 3000D, it's long lasting. It's not something you're going to be replacing every 6 months. I know it's an investment, but if you look at the price of it, it's actually a tool that is going to pay you back. Your pads last longer. You save time when you're polishing. You're not, doing a load of pads at the end of the day or the end of the week. Like some people will spend hours doing that. When doing a prep wipe down, Chris, in terms of before coating, that is really up to the coating manufacturer that is supplying you the product. Normally once is enough if you're using proper etiquette. So thank you, Johnny. Yes. I don't know what I'd do without mine either. I have 2 in the bus, just to give you an idea. I always carry a spare. No, not to carry a spare. When I teach, when I do classes, every student should have at least access to one. So, what was the other question I was answering? Oh, Sean, no. If it's still in the box, take it out of the box, please. Yeah, so Chris, the wiping twice for good measure. If you're wearing gloves when you're wiping, you're not going to get finger oils on there. You're using multiple towels. They're clean. There's probably no real need to go over it twice. So, yes, Sean, please put it together. For dealers in Mexico, I can't answer that question, but I'm sure one will pop up shortly. I know we do have dealers in Mexico. Yes, Johnny, you went from washing 10 pads during a detail to using 6 just with cleaning the pad. Robert DiTerlizzi from Florida, he uses the pad washer as well. I know he has one. So there's a lot of advantages to it. When you start using the pad washer, you'll realize there's a need for it. And a lot of people that have used the pad washer, they've used the pad washer before, or they haven't used the pad washer before, they start using it, they have an aha moment. Marcin, I have explained earlier, but I'll explain it again. Yes, using compressed air with pads, open cell or even closed cell, not a good idea. Compressed air in the world, the only pad you can use compressed air on is a microfiber pad, and you don't want to blow into the pad, you want to blow across the pad. The disadvantage of using that, of using compressed air on a pad, again, is dust in the air. And you're going to get dust everywhere, unfortunately. It's going to damage yourself, possibly the vehicle that you're working on. You have dust in the shop. We want to control dust as much as possible. We're detailers. Your shop or your work environment should be a clean room, should be an operating room, basically. So you want to keep it as clean as possible. The System 3000D helps you do that because it's not creating, it's keeping everything internal to it. It's keeping your pads clean. The cleaner your pads are, the less they're loaded, the less they're going to create dust as you're polishing as well. So even if you're using a polish or compound that is known to create dust, using the slightly damp pad from the 3000D is going to help reduce the incidence of that dust. No, it doesn't jam the clear coat up into the pad. It doesn't do that. So, there's some people that will think that. It's, especially with an open cell pad, it's just keep it, it's moistening the pad, it's lubricating it, and it's driving everything out of the pad. And the spinning action is important. So again, if you're using a, oh, thank you. If you're using a forced rotation machine, that is, it's the only handicap of the 3000D is you can wash your pads, but you can't spin them out with a forced rotation machine because the forced rotation machine doesn't spin fast enough. So at the end of your detail with a forced rotation, use the multiple pad method, and then at the end of the detail, you can clean your pads, put them out to dry, and they'll be good to go the next time. Or use a rotary or a free spinning DA to do that. There's disadvantages to, or there isn't any other disadvantage to any tool. The forced rotation is just simply, that's one of its little things. Because of the rotation is gear driven, it can't free spin and it can't get that moisture out of there. Now, as far as free spinning, when you're using a DA, a free spinning DA like a Rupes, a Zen Tool, you name it, soon to be a Udos 51E. We can't wait for that one, or at least I can. Anyways, when you're using that, you don't need to free spin for seconds or minutes on end. It's bring it up to speed 6. Once it's up to speed, stop there. You don't need to, it's going to shed as much moisture as it needs to shed in that 1 or 2 seconds that you're using it at the full speed. So it's not going to damage your machine, it's not going to hurt anything, and it's going to clean out the pad perfectly and just leave it slightly damp. If your pad seems wet, you didn't spin it out enough. There's some tools that have a shroud that contact the backing plate, or some that have space there, but that space, sometimes the shroud goes down because you hooked your tool on a stand or something like that. You want to make sure that it can free spin. So if it's free spinning, you're going to have a lot easier way of cleaning out that pad. Now, a rotary, obviously, for cleaning the pads, great machine, does a great job. I finish most vehicles with a rotary. That's my preferred tool for finishing. I use a DA for cutting and a rotary for finishing. I know that's backwards compared to most people, but it's just the way I did it. Why did you want to start detailing, and what's your most favorite part about it? Well, I've been detailing since I've been 13 years old, professionally, charging other people for it. Before that, cleaning cars, it's just something. Oh wait, questions are really coming in. I like the results. I love detailing. It's just part of my life. It's been that way for 40 years now, almost. So it's in me. We'll put it that way. So, Marcin, why do cutting pads give a better result on some paints for finishing than a finishing pad? Great question. That comes from the fact that they're just a little stiffer. In the HDO, we have that interface between them. You have less of the springing action of the pad. So if you're using a long stroke dual action machine, think of it as your backing plate. If we eliminate the rotation part of it and just look at the left to right motion. So your backing plate is going in one direction, and then all of a sudden it switches and goes the other direction. Your pad has a bit of inertia. With that inertia, your pad keeps going a little further, stretches out, and then once it reaches that elasticity point, snaps back. That is one of the causes of micromarring. And if you have a stiffer pad, like a cutting pad, or like the Blue HDO, it doesn't have as much of that elasticity, so the pad is following the backing plate more. As it follows the backing plate more evenly, you have less chance of that snapping back and that micromarring. So that is why sometimes a cutting pad actually gives you a better finish than a finishing pad on a dual action specifically. On a rotary, the softer the pad for finishing, the better it is, in my experience. Any other questions that I missed here? Just one second. My favorite part about detailing, Chris, is simply the interaction with people. Now I'm at a point in my detailing career where I'm not detailing vehicles that often, but I have the luxury and the pleasure of teaching others how to detail, and also the joys of detailing. So that, the smile you get from the customer when they see their car. They drop their car off in the morning and it looked, not so good. And they pick it up and they fall in love with it again. Things like that. That's just part of the aspect of detailing. Being able to make things shiny. So, our half hour is almost up. We have time to take a few more questions if anybody has any more questions. And then we'll wrap it up from here. You can always find these on YouTube. So go to the Lake Country MFG YouTube channel, and these are posted there. They're also posted on the Lake Country Facebook site. So attacking paint with no clear, same as a paint with a clear coat. There's no real difference. The only difference there is your pads are gonna become the color of the vehicle. But other than that, there's no real difference in compounding. I've always been a proponent of the least amount of pressure, the least amount of heat you can create, the better it is. And next week, we'll be talking about backing plates. So those of you that are into rotaries, of course, DAs have backing plates as well, but the choice of backing plates for rotaries is important. And also there's a large, there's a vast variety, and the backing plate can actually affect the way the pad cuts. And we have Wael from Egypt watching. Wow. Protection for most single stage versus clear coat protection is basically the same. The differences there might be with a coating. If you're using a ceramic coating, use the one that check with that coating manufacturer if they approve it for a single stage paint. But normally single stage or clear coat, the results are equally as good, and the protection from a coating or a wax will be just as good on a clear coat. One thing to be very careful of on a clear coat, on a single stage paint though, is when you're polishing, you don't want to induce any hydrocarbon solvents into the paint. Those hydrocarbon solvents, or sometimes oils, will give the impression that you've removed the oxidation, and in a week or two or a month later, some of that oxidation will come back. That oxidation, if you coated it, will now be under the coating. Specifically, with single stage paints, and it's also unfortunately common with gel coat. So just a few things to watch out. We're at our half-hour point. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. If you're watching live, great. I know some of you are very early in the morning or very late as well, depending on where you are in the world. This is available, or will be available shortly, on the YouTube channel of Lake Country Manufacturing, and will also stay here on the site of Lake Country on Facebook. So thanks for watching. Next week, backing plates, same time, same channel. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.